Okay, good evening. Welcome to tonight's committee meeting. My name is Councillor Patrick Walsh and I'm the chair of this committee. A few housekeeping points before we begin. This meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. By participating, you are consenting to being recorded. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff bar exit behind me on my right. Officers will direct you to the assembly point on Riverside Gardens. Please can officers and guests introduce themselves when they first address the committee? And would everybody please make sure they are speaking into the microphone? Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Charlotte Moore, who's been appointed as the independent member of the committee. So welcome to you, Charlotte, and I hope you will enjoy your time here. Excellent. Okay, so moving along to item 1, apologies for absence, and apologies for absence have been received from David Hughes. And then we also have Sharon Lee, the Chief Executive, who's joining us remotely this evening. So item 2, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest that they wish to make? Okay, hearing none. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Do members agree the minutes and the exempt minutes of the previous meeting held on the 9th of June are accurate? I will say at this point, obviously, we did have an exempt item last time. So if there is any discussion, we will need to go to an exempt or an exempt discussion later on in the item. So is there something we wish to do? Is that agreed? Agreed. Excellent. Okay, so we'll take the main items as agreed, and then we'll have a discussion at the end of tonight's meeting once we've finished the rest of the open meeting. So moving on to item 4, statement of accounts for 24-25, including the pension fund accounts and the annual governance statement. Can I ask that, starting with Councillor Ree, to speak for a few minutes on the report, and then also bring in Sukhvinder as well before we bring in our officers for this evening. So we have Paul Cottle, who is the key audit partner from Grant Thornton, Nick Halwell, who's the senior manager for this item, and also is James Newman. So Councillor Ree, is there anything you wish to say?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, committee, for giving me the chance to come here and speak this evening. Yes, obviously, putting the accounts together every year is a long and grueling process, but it's one that it's an important part of the good governance of any borough, and I think publishing them and subjecting them to scrutiny like this is important as a way to reassure our residents. I'm sure that given the audit reports we've had in previous years, as well as reviews like the LGA peer review that we had earlier this year, I think we've provided quite a lot of reassurance to residents that despite the awful news that we hear about local government funding, Hammersmith and Fulham is a well-run borough, that their services are well managed, and that we look after the finances with ruthless financial efficiency. And to that end, I'd like to thank all of the officers who've been involved in putting these accounts together, all of the officers and cabinet members who've managed their budget so effectively over the course of the year, and to the good people at Grant Thornton who've gone through them with a fine-tooth comb and reassured our residents that things are in a healthy shape. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. Sukhvinder.
Thank you, Chair. If I can just really echo what Councillor Ree has just said. The Council provides an extensive range of services to our residents: highways, schools, parks, housing, you name it. And our finances are complicated. The financial statements themselves that are in front of you are almost 150 pages long and are prescribed by all manner of regulations and legislation. So it's very important that you, as members of the committee here, together with our residents in the borough, visitors and businesses, have complete assurance that the financial statements and the financial management of this authority is well run overall. I can assure you that Paul has been absolutely thorough by the number of queries we've had with all the details that they've reviewed overall in there. We expect that from fully, but Paul will talk about that in a few moments himself. And it's good to see that the accounts overall there are presented very well, and you're happy and content with the statements, and that we'll be giving an unmodified opinion to the council. And there are some minor recommendations. You'd expect anything as long as 150 pages long to have some issues. So we have made some adjustments in terms of how we record some of our debtors and our creditors, long-term and short-term debtors. But I don't think they're considered to be material and don't affect any of the numbers that we've declared overall in our financial statements overall. But to also extend my thanks to Paul and his team for the work that they've done on that.
Yeah. Thank you. So we've got 4 papers under this item. So what I'll do is I'll just talk briefly. I'll take them in turn. So if there's any questions, I'll stop. So we've got our Appendix 2, which is the audit findings report relating specifically to the council's financial statements. We have Appendix 3, the auditor's findings report related to the pension fund. So we provide a separate opinion on that. And then we have 2 representation letters that we are asking that this committee approves. So they are happy that the right people in the council sign those off. So they're the 4 documents I'm going to go through. So if I start with Appendix 2, this document, it's big, so there are a lot of pages, and as we've just been talking about, a lot of that is driven by the various standards that as auditors we're required to work to. So there's 60 odd pages in the financial statements audit findings report. So there's a lot of things that we're required to communicate with those charged with governance. So that's the purpose of this document. So there is a lot of detail in there, and it links well to the plan that we would have presented earlier in the year, which sets out the areas of where we're doing most of our work, and most of the focus is based on that. So around the items in the accounts that are either being directed by standards. So for example, every audit that any auditor does, they have a significant risk around management override of controls, because management are in a unique position to be able to manipulate the financial statements. So every audit, local government, commercial world, that is a risk that exists. So we obviously spend a lot of our audit time working on areas around journals and things like that, estimations. So we also do quite a lot of work. So there's quite a lot of detail in here around our work around the pensions liability or asset for a council, and around the valuation of land and buildings and investment properties. So in terms of the conclusions, I think the high level thing that I would want to draw out to the committee's attention is that our work is substantially complete. We're just waiting for the sign off now from this committee, and a final set of accounts and representation letters, and then we'll be looking to sign, which I think is a really strong position to be in. So I think the council fell behind for a few years. That was largely, it was to do with just a technical point around pensions that meant that the council got caught out. And it took a number of years to resolve while they were waiting for external factors. And that has happened. And I think 3 sets of accounts, or maybe 4 sets of accounts, was through.
5 in 2 years.
5 in 2 years. So the council had gone from having quite a backlog, similar to a lot of its peers, but has signed all those off. You're now in a position where you're ahead of most councils. So I would be surprised. I know from Grant Thornton, I think does 1/3 of London boroughs, this will be the first one that we will be signing with an unqualified opinion, and I would be amazed if anyone else has signed one. So you are in a very strong position. So it's obviously testament to the amount of work that's been undertaken in the last few years to get to and to develop the process. And obviously this is the first year where we're starting at a similar time to everybody else. So we've had a really positive experience. So that the set of accounts that were provided as a draft were of a good quality. So yes, there are various adjustments that are communicated in the report, but that is something that we would expect to see with a complex set of accounts that run 150 odd pages. There is nothing in there that would be a concern for us, which would challenge our conclusion to issue an unqualified opinion. So I'm happy to take any questions specifically on Appendix 2. I can stop there.
If you want to present your item, we'll take the full item and then we will refer to committee questions after that.
So you'd like to go through, okay, so the next one is around the pension fund. So we also, have a separate audit on that as well. So with a separate output at the end. So that work has gone quite smoothly the last few years. I think there's a good experience in the team in terms of the accounts that have been produced, and again the responses to queries. So again, it's a relatively big document. It explains a lot of there's a lot of similarities in terms of the risks we look at, but obviously specific things to the pension fund. And that work is complete as well now. So I think when we issued the report, there was a couple of things outstanding. I think they have been cleared. So I don't think there's anything I wanted to draw on specifically from this report. I'll take that one as read. So they're the two substantive items on for us. And then we've got the two draft letters of representation. I guess a question we often get asked, so to preempt that, is there anything in there that you would want to draw out? And is there anything different to the kind of the standard people that have experienced audit committees and accounts will see that the auditor, for every audit provides a representation letter that we ask to sign. There is nothing in there that is novel or unusual that we're asking for representations on. It's all very much the standard things that we would be issuing to any client in the sector. So that's the 4 papers.
Thank you for that, Paul. James, is there anything from yourself? Fabulous. Okay. In that case, I'm going to move to committee members' questions. So do members of the committee have any questions they wish to raise? I'm going to start with our new independent member.
Thanks. Am I pressing my button right? Can you hear me? So first, I just wanted to say that they are really clean accounts, and I do read a lot of accounts, so really well done all. And it's hard to get clean accounts when you've got a new audit partner, because honestly, they're looking for something to pick up. And IFRS 16, which is accounting for leases, is really complicated. So that was excellent. And the pension accounts are very clean as well. And they are actually a really good read. I think if I was a pensioner or a member, I might actually, understand them, which is, Anyway, I had 2 quick questions. One is for Grant Thornton and one is for management. Grant Thornton is page 45 on the unadjusted misstatements, where there was 1.6 million relating to CapEx, which was picked up from the bank account, the bank rec. I just wanted assurance that there weren't any underlying issues with the bank recs, that the issue was the cash was just effectively coded incorrectly. That was question 1. And then question 2 is probably for management. On page 48, there's a comment that councillors didn't complete their annual related party declarations. There's an action for management to review the process. And my question is, that's fine to review the process, but does management need some support from whoever the relevant members are to actually tell people that they need to fill in their related party disclosures? Because it is an important point of transparency, both for the organisation, but actually also for individual members, because it's a protection that they've disclosed stuff.
So Glenn, did you
Councillor
want to
Potter,
start?
if I can pick up on the second question first, perhaps Paul can then come back on the first question for. We recognise that there is a little bit of more rigorous control that we need to put in place in there. So we will be working with members and sort out our internal reporting processes to streamline that and make it much more clearer. And then we'll obviously make sure that we work through the Cabinet Member Finance and Reform and make sure that those things get done. I think there were a small number out of the 50 members that we've got who hadn't completed those, but we recognise that it's an important declaration to be sorted out, and we'll get that done.
Yeah, could I just come in on that as well? You're right, it's a very important part of the process. I've personally spent evenings chasing down individual members of the Labour group, trying to get them to make sure that they sign. But yeah, I think we'll redouble efforts next year, certainly.
Paul, do you want to come in?
Yes, so in relation to the completeness error, so we were happy that was isolated. So I think it was just a timing thing relating to an accrual. So, and we do undertake quite a lot of work around expenditure completeness. So that was one sample in a significant population. And I think if we had any concerns either relating to the cash reconciliation element or the actual recognition of expenditure within the right periods, we would have extended our test and we were satisfied it was isolated.
Thank you, Paul. Do members have questions? Councillor Homan.
Yeah, mine's a general question. I'm not sure that I've come across this before. It's actually for officers, because I've seen a lot of reports from people and talent, but I don't think I've ever seen the age profile before. And in this, we've got the age profile showing on page 22. I'm just wondering if the fact that we've got sort of majority of our staff are 50 plus, if we consider that a risk, and is there a strategy to deal with that in place?
Councillor Walsh, if I can certainly try to respond to that question. I think most of our staff consider LBHS to be a wonderful borough to work for, and therefore spend a long time working with us. Most of our staff spend in excess of 20 years here, and they're quite happy in doing that. We recognise that there are things that we've got to look at, our future succession planning and how we deal with that. The council has got all sorts of arrangements for apprentice schemes, for getting ahead programmes that encourages people to progress through the ranks. But we will take that away and we'll make sure that the profile is in accordance with what's needed. But on the other hand, Councillor Oman, it brings great experience, people who can do things more efficiently and well, and have got that knowledge about the borough and allows it to be efficient and well run overall.
Can I just come back? How do we compare with other boroughs on age profile? Do we know?
I haven't got this information here,
Okay.
but we can certainly have a look, because
That'd be
that information will be available in all the other London boroughs' financial statements. So we'll have a look at that.
great. Thank you very much.
I'm going to bring in the Chief Executive here, Sharon Lee. She's got her hand up.
Chair, we're happy to provide further information to Councillor Homan, but
Sharon,
actually,
we cannot hear you at the moment.
I'm not on mute. Oh, let me just see. How is that? Any better? I'm not on mute.
Sorry, we still can't hear you.
Okay. Let me.
I'm going to leave this with our technical team if they can.
Don't worry. Move on.
Still can't hear you.
Let me go chat.
Okay. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, on to Councillor Adrian Pascoe-Tilborough.
Thank you very much. I've got a number of questions, but I think as most of them relate to the figures underlying rather than the way it's been audited, which I think is excellent. If it's all right, I might email quite a few of them separately to you, Sukhinder. One of the questions was on page 147 on the section about managing information. Obviously, in May this year, we had a bit of a difficult situation where the ICO didn't have terribly complimentary things to say about us. That was due to an incident that took place in 2 years previously. I was wondering whether it was the right place for that and steps being taken to address issues. Would the right place for that be in this annual report, or would it be in something relating to previous years?
Sorry, this is on 147, managing
Yeah.
information. Yeah, so I think just to reassure people, the majority of this deals with information security and cybersecurity, that there are no problems with the council's cybersecurity systems. We get 20,000 potential cyber attacks a day, and we have been able to repel all of them. I think the incident that you're talking about is something relating to sorry, what's the word? What's the Yes, that's right. It was some information that was sent out. Systems have changed since then. Processes have changed. This happened a long time ago, and as you'd expect with anything to do with tech, we're constantly updating how we go about doing things and the processes and the systems that we use. So we don't consider this to be a risk anymore.
Okay, is there further questions? Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a very quick one, just for the sort of committee's benefit. Could you quickly explain about earmarked reserves? Can you sort of talk about what they are, what they do? Sukhvinder.
I can, and James will help me out. So the council maintains some earmarked reserves. They're normally for a specific purpose, whether it's a project that we've got or some costs that we're doing. So for example, we do a 3-year digital replacement program for all the laptops. So we'd put that in an earmarked reserve and we'd use the resources from there. But they are usually all detailed in the budget reports that are presented to the council, and they're very limited in scope, Councillor Nimmo. So they'll be for very, very specific purposes overall. And I've given you an example of one. There are others, insurance fund and 1 or 2 investment projects that we've got as well. James, I don't know whether you want to add anything.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, obviously they'll therefore go up and down, but I just wondered if you're content with the sort of level of this general funds balance reserve at the moment.
Yes, and Councillor Nimmo, we are always constantly looking at our level of reserves overall, and we're comparing that across to the other boroughs as well. We're right in the median of that overall position, and we're making contributions to those. So our general balances, we've contributed £1 million over the past 3 years to those with our underspends and our revenue spend. And elsewhere, we're generating more resources from Section 106 and developer contributions, which we'll set aside as well for those reserves. But for the moment, I'm comfortable that that represents a right level of reserves for the council and balances overall. I'm sure Paul would have commented on that in his report had he been uncomfortable about that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a really good, really important point to raise, actually. We've seen over the last few years the difficulty that so much of the local government sector has. In so many places, they're taking money out of reserves every year in order to balance budgets. The fact that we've been able for the last 3 years in a row to put money into our reserves because we've run a budget surplus, I think is a really important achievement. And it's something that I'm very proud of, and I think that the residents can take reassurance from as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Nimmo. I'm going to try and see if we can reconnect with our Chief Executive. Sharon, are you able to hear us? And importantly, are we able to hear you?
I can hear you, Chair. I don't know if you can hear me.
Unfortunately, it would seem we still are not able to hear our Chief Executive.
Don't worry.
However, we'll leave it with the tech team to continue to try and reconnect. From myself, I just want to check, is there any further questions? Okay, well, I just want to obviously, speaking, I think, on behalf of the committee here, to thank Grant Thornton for the work that you've done. I think, Paul, as you mentioned yourself, we have come through a number of annual reports and bringing them up to date, and obviously the 5 sets of reports that we've managed to pass and to get ourselves on track. And what that does mean for residents is that we are able to say that money being spent here in Hammersmith and Fulham is fully accounted for, and that we haven't had to use any backstops or assurances to get ourselves back on track. So I think it is to be applauded, obviously, the work that you guys have done, the work officers have done as well, to ensure that we have managed to bring ourselves fully up to date and are continuing to remain on track as well. So obviously, I think on behalf of the committee, I want to thank yourselves and obviously our officers as well for working in tandem in that respect. If there's no further questions, I'm going to move to the recommendations. And there are 7 recommendations. So do members agree to 1, to approve the 24-25 annual governance statement, which is included in the statement of accounts at Appendix 1. 2, to approve the statement of accounts for 24-25, including the pension fund accounts, also at Appendix 1. 3, to note the content of the external auditor's findings report, ISA 260, main audit and Pension Fund, including the auditor's findings, recommendation, and the council's response to those recommendations at appendices 2 and 3. 4, to approve the 24-25 management representation letters, appendix 4 and 5. Number 5, to approve the Pension Fund annual report 24-25 at appendix 6. 6, to note the accounts remain unaudited until final sign-off by the external auditor. 7, to delegate authority to the chair of the audit committee in consultation with the executive director of finance and corporate services to approve any further adjustments to appendices 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, which may be required as part of the completion of the audit work. Is this agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. In that case, we shall move along to item 5, the annual audit report, value for money 24-25. And again, could I start with Councillor Ree to bring in some to introduce this report, and also speaking on this is going to be Sukhvinder, Paul, and Nick from Grant Thornton. So, Councillor Ree, is there anything you'd like to speak as we go on to the report?
No, not in particular. I think I've already mentioned how we go through various processes within the council to try and make sure we're as efficient as possible. One of our mantras one of our values is to try and achieve ruthless financial efficiency for our residents. And I think this report really sums up well how we've gone about doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Ree. Sukhvinder, is there anything you wish to add?
Thank you, Chair. Just some general comments. Local authorities have many number of inspectors, as you know, for all our services. And the one that causes most sleepless nights is the external auditor. They have got some very extensive powers, as you know from the report, their public interest reports, judicial reviews, etc. And they can make advisory notices. So I'm very pleased to see that Paul has not been required to use any of those extensive powers. Thank you very much for that, Paul. In terms of the assessments overall, Paul is required to make 3 assessments on financial sustainability, governance, and effectiveness, including economy and efficiency. There's a little table in the report in section 5 that tells you what our current assessment is on those. And I'm very pleased to see that we have got no red assessments in there. They're all green or amber. So that should give the council, the residents, and businesses assurance, as Councillor Ree has said, that the council's financials are being well run and well governed overall. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sukhvinder. So turning over to Paul and to Nick to present this item.
Thank you. So I'll of course take the report as read. It is another big one, and I think as has already been covered, the auditor has various responsibilities in terms of its value for money work, and we can raise the various types of recommendations. So and actually in appendix B of the report, so page 469 of the pack, we do explain those. So they range in significance. So we have statutory recommendations, which are very, very serious, and that kicks in a whole process that takes place. It's something that has very rarely happened, but as we're seeing now, we're seeing more statutory recommendations made by auditors, which reflect some of the issues within the sector. And obviously, if you don't have any of those, if you now, and then the other 2 types of recommendations we raised, are key recommendations or they're improvement recommendations. So last year there were a couple of key recommendations, and they were relating specifically to the HRA. Very pleased to see that our work this year, where we follow up on our recommendations, has seen that those have been downgraded or they've been cleared. So we can see that a lot of work has been undertaken in those areas in the last 12 months that has made us comfortable that we no longer would consider that there is significant weakness in arrangements within those areas. So that's very positive. There are improvement recommendations. They are things that are, in a lot of cases, are nice to haves that we've picked up as during the process of our audit. There are a few in here, but there's nothing that I would want to draw out and say that are of particular concern. So I think I would probably reiterate the messages that have been shared. I think this report reflects very well on the council. It's a vehicle that is being increasingly used by external auditors in the sector to raise some quite significant issues. So the fact that you are having a report that, okay, there are some, auditors love RAG ratings and there's some ambers in there, but really they're ambers because of the improvement recommendations. I think it's a very positive report and reflects well on the council's financial sustainability around the governance arrangements that it has in place and around the kind of the 3 E's, that final catch-all. So I'm happy to take any questions on the report.
Thank you, Paul. So do members of the committee have any questions they wish to raise? Councillor Homan.
Yeah, I'm just going to find my pages now. Page 445, RIRI1, I think it is. I'm going to go and find the page now. The first point, could you just sort of clarify on that? If I can, I've got to go and find it now. I'm flipping backwards and forwards between the pages. I think it's about optimism. Are we being over optimistic, I think is the question, isn't it? Or if you could just maybe say a little bit more about that. Do you want me to read the particular point? You found it, yeah. Yeah.
So this recommendation, members of the committee, is really about our housing revenue account and our 10-year business plan, and whether we've had a look at making sure it's pragmatic and we've done some sensitivity testing, worse scenarios or better scenarios. So we'll look at that and improve that little bit of sensitivity testing and risk analysis overall, because our HRA business plan is based on some very pragmatic assumptions, both for fiscal arrangements in terms of interest rates, in terms of inflation, our condition of the stock and so on. But we will improve that a bit and see if we can report that. There'll be a report that goes to Cabinet in February, which will set that out.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask about is page 453. Again, I've got to find it. It says the council could consider, and that's about timings of some financial reporting, I think. So that's the other. I mean, it's all good, but obviously we want to be the best. So we if we can improve, we'd like to.
And we don't want to be the best. We want to be exceptional and outstanding if we can help it, Councillor Homan. So there is always an issue about how we can be more efficient about doing our reporting to Cabinet, perhaps reduce the timescales for those. But there are internal governance processes and other processes that we need to do. So we'll look at that and see if there is any way we can shorten that. I think personally they're maximised and optimised at the moment, but it's something that we can take away and see if we can improve further on.
I think that relates to the taking the Treasury Management mid-year and out-term reports to Cabinet, and we've already agreed we're going to do that. So we've already kind of agreed, and that's happening. So that's taken as read, actually. So yeah.
Great, thank you very much.
I'm going to go to Councillor Pascal-Tilbury.
Thank you very much. A quick one about the HRA reserves. Obviously, we've seen them go from about 160 million last year to 44 million this year, which is a big drop in real terms as well as percentage terms. I understand that that just reflects that some of the money is held in other short-term areas, but even so, it seems our liquidity position is quite tricky at about 50%. And I was wondering if that, or any comments about the sustainability of that long term and how we get that number up.
Yeah, in terms of the HRA reserve, obviously the point of reserves is, to keep putting money aside for a rainy day. And I think it's been well reported that there have been issues within the housing system here in Hammersmith and Fulham. And we've spent the money that we need to put that right. We weren't left a particularly great legacy. But after the, we've made the changes that we need to make. We've made the changes we need to become compliant with all of the new building regulations that have come in. And we're now in a stage where we're topping up reserves year on year. We have earmarked reserves, which is money that we put aside for specific projects that we know are going to come up. And then we have general reserves, which are there, as I say, for a rainy day. These are the ones that we're topping up now. I think the HRA is in a far healthier position today than it was 2 years ago. I think the housing service is in a far better position today than it was 2 years ago as well. And this is a sign that we're moving in the right direction, and that we've taken difficult decisions, but important decisions that have turned that around. I think also with some of the stability that we've been given from central government now in terms of rents policy as well. That puts us on a much more stable position for our 10-year business plan for the HRA.
Okay. I'll go to Charlotte.
Thanks. So my question is about what was KR2 and is now IR4, which is the improvement journey around operational performance in housing. So the ambition is to meet the minimum core standards, so not be the best, be the minimum core standards. And the target is March 2026, but there's a note from management there that may slip. So my question is, given that this relates to, actual housing with, actual people in them and minimum core standards, is the current trajectory acceptable, and have other options for speeding it up, or at least prioritising whatever the worst bits are, been considered?
Charlotte, so Councillor Ree has indicated earlier about some of the financial changes and resilience that we put in place on the HRA. I know you want to have the organisational history, but we were operating the HRA on a deficit, and we've now rectified all those things. We've built up the balances and we've contributed to those things, as Councillor Ree has said. The kind of HRAs across the country are under some pressure, particularly really going back, and I'm sorry to have to mention this, but there was a period during the late 2016 to 2020 when there was a significant change in the housing policy and the rent policy. There was a -1% rent reduction imposed. And what that did was it took out huge amounts of resources from local authorities. In our case, it was 13%. That did have an impact on how much we could invest on our decent homes to maintain those. But we will be redressing that position. I think all our tenants deserve a decent home, which is about good, warm, stable conditions. And that is something we won't move away from. There are other changes that have only came in yesterday, or in fact today, Howard's law about damp and mold. So we're making sure the investment in those goes in and that we do the right thing. So the council is doing all those things to make sure that the standards that the tenants get, new central heating systems, bathrooms, kitchens, all those things will be done, and we comply with the asset compliance requirements. Now, we will look at that on an annual basis as part of the business plan, and we'll make sure that there are enough resources to allow that to be continued.
That's helpful. It doesn't quite answer my question around is the pace enough, and have you explored options to improve the pace?
Well, the pace we can operate will also be determined by the amount of resources we've got. So we've got to balance those things right. And we've got priorities. There are other priorities within our housing programme. We want to build new homes, new affordable homes for our residents as well. So we're balancing those and making sure that it's right there. But as I say, what I can say to you is that it is something that we look at on an annual basis, and we'll look at the stock condition, and we evaluate the demands and the backlog of repairs, if there are any, and we will address those as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further questions? Okay. If there is no further questions, I will move to the recommendation. Do members agree to note the contents of the auditor's annual report for the year end March 25 from Grant Thornton LLP at Appendix 1? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Excellent. So in that case, we move to item 6, the Treasury Management Outturn Report for 24-25. And could I ask Sophie Green to brief us on this report, please? And also attending on this item is Matthew Dawson. So over to you, Sophie and Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Matt Dawson. So I used to present to this committee when I was responsible for your Treasury account. I'm nowadays looking after your pension fund, so I'm here deputising for Pat. To my right is Sophie, who is very much your expert and does your banking, dealing and borrowing every single day. So she's very much the expert. I will set the scene. This is an audit committee, so by far and away the most important thing is the year 24-25 fully compliant. No breaches, nothing went wrong in terms of the prudential indicators, well within any sort of tolerance, all authorised limits were complied with. And in terms of the environment itself, it's pretty challenging from a Treasury perspective, and it's challenging because long-term borrowing rates remain quite pricey. And they remain pricey, and consequently, we have to be very tactical when we borrow. The other thing that's happened is the short-term base, the bank rate, if you like, has been slowly decreasing as far as the year 24-25 is concerned. So we did see a reduction in the yield available on your cash balances. You'll see you ended the year with a very low cash balance. It's worth mentioning that we have undertaken borrowing this financial year. As at today, your balances they're about double what they were reported at year end, with more to do. We would seek to do more borrowing throughout this financial year. It tends to be a shorter term borrowing at the moment just because of the rates available in the short term. The cost of carry between what we can invest that money for and what we're borrowing at is that the spread is actually it's palatable, whereas the long-term interest rates where you're still looking at 5.5%, 6%, we'd rather do what we think is going to happen and what your consultant is advised in, that we wait for long-term rates to fall. Long-term rates will be predicted to start a reduction in 2026. We're probably not going to see a bank rate reduction before the end of the financial year. In fact, if you look at the last MPC meeting, it was 7.2 to hold rates at 4%. And that's just an inflationary thing. Inflation's still 3.8, 3.9%, still quite away from the target rate of 2%. So until that comes down, we wouldn't expect the base rate to reduce. However, looking at your forecasts, a gentle reduction in base rate is expected in the next 2 to 3 years. It's worth mentioning actually that this report, the way it's fallen in terms of your committee cycle, we are actually bringing the mid-year report to the December meeting. So it won't be very long before you see everything that we've done in the first 6 months for you. So in the last item, it was briefly touched on the HRA account and reserves. When we do undertake borrowing this financial year, it will be with the HRA in mind. The gap between your capital financing requirement on HRA and general fund is very flexible. We choose to borrow for the HRA because it's where the cash is needed, and the PWLB, you do get that further 20 basis point discount in terms of, so you get your quoted rate, they take 20 off for your certainty rate, but you do get that further 20 basis points for HRA debt. So it will be the housing revenue account that we borrow on. So the priorities haven't changed really. We're still managing liquidity, and that is very much on these sorts of balances. We're keeping it as short as possible. We just don't have the cash balances to be locking cash away. Even if we did, the premiums just aren't there. We're not in that environment anymore. The only other thing I'd probably mention is we're now seeing cash flows from the abundance investment. That's nicely nicely embedded now in the system. It's working well. So yeah, I'll pass on to Sophie to go through some of the more interesting tables in the report.
Well, hiya, so I'm Sophie, the Treasury Manager. So the table in paragraph 4 shows the interest paid and received during the year. The total interest paid was 19.9 million compared to interest received of 17.3 mil. At the end of last year, when cash balances and rates were much higher, we locked in some really good deals, mainly with local authorities, ranging from 5.4% to 6.4%, which has allowed us to still perform quite well on the interest received despite the bank rate and cash balances dropping throughout the year. Then in paragraph 6, the table shows how our investments were split at year end. As we didn't have much cash, we kept most of it liquid in money market funds, which we are still continuing to do now. And then if you jump down to paragraph 17, we achieved an average interest rate in the year of 5.22%. That compared to the average market rate of 4.91%. And that is because of those investments we did at the end of last year, which I mentioned earlier. And then down in paragraph 20, this shows our potential indicators. And as Matt said earlier, they've all been met. And we're happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you, Sophie, and thank you to Matthew. Sylvain, did you want to speak on this as well?
Thanks, if I may. I just wanted to reassure the committee that all our treasury management is done in line with the treasury management strategy that's approved by full council. So all the prudential indicators have been met. Otherwise, the auditors would have commented on those. What Sophie and Matt have said to you is that we are very good at investing our cash balances. We're generating more interest on those. Our debt overall, all debt, it's got quite low rates, 3.7% in total. But I want to emphasize a particular point overall. The borrowing that the council is undertaking is purely on the housing revenue account, which is what Charlotte mentioned earlier. And in that context, I just need to say a couple more words on that. The council owns 12,000 homes, roughly, bar half a dozen here or there. On the open market value, that stock is worth £5 billion almost. But we have to show it on our balance sheet at a particular value, which is called an existing use value under social housing, because our residents have got a secure tenancy. Even then, it's valued at £1.5 billion. Okay, so it's 25% or thereabouts of the open market value. So I like to maintain some very, very good ratios overall. I never like to see our debt exceeding more than about 30% of the value of our stock. So I want to give the committee assurance here that the debt levels are relatively low on our housing. They're about 20,000 a property, 20,000 a property, and each home is worth half a million. Okay.
Thank you, Sigvinder. Do members of the committee have any questions they wish to raise? Okay. Hearing none, which is encouraging. Obviously, to yourself, Sophie, and to Matthew, obviously, to thank you guys for the work that you do in terms of the investments that you've made. Obviously, they've turned out to be quite sensible and produce some good results. Obviously, there are some councils across the country where we do know that they have not been so successful in terms of their investments. So in terms of the safety and the security that's been provided, obviously, I think that's worth recognition. So thank you to you both in that respect. If there are no questions, I'm going to move to the recommendations. Do members agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Agreed. Excellent. So in that case, we move to item 7, which is our risk management update. And could I ask Maura Mackey to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Maura Mackey. I'm the Head of Internal Audit. This report is usually presented by either David Hughes or Jules Binney, but unfortunately neither of them could be here today. You may recall that we've had a review of the risk management strategy back in March 2025. So it was refreshed to look at the years 2025 to 2028. Recognised that there was a bit of work to do to try and perhaps rationalise some of the risks, consolidate some of them. And a lot of work has gone on in the last few months with conversations with directors so that they are more understanding of what risks we're trying to reflect in the register and how they need to identify how they will be managed and how successful we will be on that. As a result of that, an updated risk register was presented to the senior leadership team back in September. And even from that, there were some more updates made to it prior to this version that we're sharing with you here. But generally speaking, it's still a work in progress. It's always a work in progress, I think, with risk management. and things will always be changing. But the departments do have their own risks that they manage. They understand the importance of escalating things up to the senior leadership team where it needs to be discussed. Senior leadership also undertake deep dives where they're concerned with any particular areas. And I think I noticed in one of the auditor recommendations that they wanted the risk register to be improved to identify the mitigating actions and things like that. So hopefully we're on the way to actually presenting that, which will mean that that recommendation can be ticked from the external auditors. There's been a few changes which have been spelt out in paragraph 11 of the report, which is on page 485. Hopefully that makes sense, but some of them were consolidating recommendations, and some of them were moved. Some of them had actually moved in their ratings, and that would be reflected in the updated heat map. That was all I was going to say, but obviously quite welcome any questions on any of the risks identified there or any areas of risk management that anyone would like to ask.
Thank you, Maura. Do members of the committee have any questions they wish to ask? Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, just quick one. So we've obviously got the fair funding review coming up. I was just wondering what's the latest on that? Maybe Savinda can explain. There's been lots of speculation, but I imagine we won't hear much until the Chancellor's budget later in the month.
Councillor Nimmo, I wish I had a crystal ball and was able to say what was going to happen on the 26th of November. But I'm rather hoping that the government will take a very pragmatic and considered view and reflect on the fact that London boroughs are working very hard to provide excellent services, and that they need to really make sure that boroughs like the council here, you've heard from the external auditor earlier about how well you manage your resources and how well you want to deliver services, continue to be incentivised. So I'm hoping that the eventual proposals that come out are modified and mitigated a bit. And the council here will do its bit to help the nation's public finances overall. It always does, and we will do that still. But I'm hoping that that will be a bit better. Perhaps when we meet on the 1st of December, we can have a further conversation about this.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, Savinda's absolutely right about that. So we've been doing an awful lot of work behind the scenes, either with London councils, with other lobbying groups of councils that are potentially going to be affected by the changes, and on our own as Hammersmith and Fulham, really to put the case for our residents and why we think it's important that government recognises the work that we're doing and doesn't unfairly punish us for the hard work that we've done. As a borough, we contribute far more to the Exchequer than we get back in terms of our business rates, in terms of the growth that we're generating here in the borough through things like our innovative industrial strategy. And we want to make sure that we're in the best possible position in order to continue that, to make sure that we can grow the economy here in Hammersmith and Fulham and grow the economy across the country as best we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I hope the Chancellors are sitting in tonight. No further questions, Chair.
Indeed. Councillor Pascal-Tilbury.
I was going to ask the same thing, actually, so no need for me to talk anymore, but I'm glad that there is good and I note cross-party aligned lobbying on this, and that we should not be paying more than our fair share because we do a lot.
Thank you, Councillor Pascal-Tilbury. Anybody else got questions? Our independent member.
Thank you, Maura. And I thought it was as a first-time reader, I thought it was a really nice, clear report. I could understand what was going on and what you were saying. So that's always a good start, isn't it? I was going to ask about risk 18, which is the backlog of complaints. So the gross risk, the inherent risk is 16, and the residual is 12, and it's currently still at 16. And looking back through previous reports, it was at 16 in June and it was at 16 in March. I can't sort of trace it before then, but I think when the committee received the annual complaints report for 23-24 in November 24, it was also at 16. So my question is, when does the action plan expect that the risk level is going to change to the target 12? And is the senior leadership team confident that the actions are on track to deliver that?
I'm going to see, is there something Sharon wants to comment on, if possible?
Chair, can you hear me?
Sharon, can you hear us?
Oh dear.
Okay.
I can hear
Uh,
you, but
No, unfortunately, it seems this evening we're not going to be able to hear Sharon. So I'm going to refer to Sukhvinder on this matter.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best to answer the question. Charlotte, the council does not really want to receive any complaints at all. One complaint is too much for us if we receive that. We want to provide the best services we can. We did go through a period of difficulty, particularly on the housing side. The Ombudsman was with us here and looked at our complaints arrangements under the Section 49 reports. They were satisfied with the progress that we've done with that, to the extent that they were able to discharge all the recommendations just in the summer gone overall. So we're going to continue, and it's the importance that we're attaching to making sure we respond appropriately to the complaints in line with the timescales that we've set out overall. So we will make sure that we carry on doing that, and management reviews that regularly. Sharon chairs a sort of monthly special board that looks at all the complaints and all the key cases and responds to those overall.
I mean, I don't know if the annual complaints, because it came in November last year, so I don't know if it's going to come again shortly, but I just think, I'm sure lots of people are doing lots of work, but I suppose I'm asking quite specifically, where is it that we're going to be that takes that risk down from 16 to 12? I guess it's not, much as I would love to have no complaints, I guess it's not the point where you have no complaints. Yeah, so
Yeah.
maybe for the next meeting or that report a bit more.
We could have 0 complaints tomorrow if we wanted to, and we do that by just not telling anyone how to complain.
No, let's not.
But we've done the opposite approach, right? We've made it very straightforward for people who are having issues to complain. We've provided all of the details. We've encouraged it in a way so that we can identify where the problems are. So where we're getting clusters of complaints about the same issues, that helps us identify problems. It means we can go in, solve those problems. And then it means in the future, we won't get those same levels. So these things do take time to work through the system, but we think we've taken the right approach in order to be open and to identify the areas where there are concerns. And as a result of that, I think we're going to see we're already seeing a reduction, and we're going to see far more of a reduction in the future.
So I accept all of that. I guess my question is, when would we expect to go down to 12? But I don't know if the complaints report comes annually. So if it does come annually, that might be a moment to answer that, or maybe it only came one off.
Maura, do you know when is the?
I must admit, I don't recall that being an annual report that came to the committee. It may have been a one-off. But we can always do an update on numbers, couldn't we? Performance, I guess.
We can, Councillor Walsh. I haven't got my laptop here with me, otherwise I would have checked on the audit committee's last meeting in June. But there will be a report that comes through in the near future, because we do an annual report here that explains all the positions for the council overall.
I do recall.
We welcome complaints and we provide learning to the organisation, the volume of complaints to housing, the other targets, and we are working on housing service and improvement in complaints increasing.
I completely get that. I suppose I'm just saying you're reporting it's out of tolerance. So,
Yeah, I do recall that we have had the Housing Ombudsman report, and obviously we have had discussions about stage 1 and stage 2 complaints. So I think it is incorporated in that as when we discuss that as an item, but as you say, it's not a standalone item in itself. But I think to pick up on the point that Councillor Reid made as well, that we have changed our process to make it as simple as possible for people to complain when we get it wrong. Obviously, we've made an acknowledgement that we haven't always got it right, particularly around housing, and we have been working through that process to try and correct where we have made mistakes. Obviously, that does mean that there has been a backlog of things that we do need to fix, and that will take time in itself. and it is important that we get those problems right, and that in turn will, of course, in time, be reflected in subsequent reports. But all of these things are fluid. Obviously, they will take time to resolve themselves, but there is a commitment, I think, from the senior teams to address this, and it is understood as a priority to address as well.
Chair, it is absolutely a priority. The Chief Exec has a monthly meeting to look at all the backlog and the complaints that are coming through. And I've just read what our Chief Exec has indicated to you. We will bring a report back here at some point, as we do annually, on our overall position.
Yeah, I think reading the comment section there, that Sharon has indicated that it's a weekly meeting that she has. I believe that's with Richard from our housing and repairs team that she meets with to discuss this. So it is a priority. It is something that obviously we do need to get right, but obviously it is continues to be a work in progress. Is the Councillor Homan?
Yes, it's not directly related to the report, but it's just topical, I think. We've got the red risk of technology, and we all know all of the pitfalls relating to that. Just wondered, with the recent, I think it was just last week, and you may not know the answer to this, it may need to come from somebody in IT, the Amazon cloud services, which messed up a whole load of apps. Did we have any problems with that? As I said, it's just a risk, but it's not directly related to this rating, but it's a question.
Before we take that, is this something we may wish to discuss under exempt items? I think
Fine.
we'll refer this to our exempt items.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is there any further questions? Okay. More just a general question for yourself. Obviously, you did mention that our risk register has reduced progressively in size, and that departments themselves do manage specific departmental risks within their own framework. Speaking in your capacity as the internal auditor, do you see the where a departmental risk is starting to go beyond that? Obviously, I'm just making an assumption here that there is occasions where this does happen, that it does get brought up from the, let's say, the internal risk register of a department onto the broader council risk register. Do you see that being properly escalated or de-escalated as needs be?
So obviously, to actually get to the state we are now, we had a lot of discussions with directors and executive directors to get to where we needed to be. And obviously, some things that may escalate at a departmental level still won't come onto this because they're not quite, they need to be managed in their own environment, and they're not quite hitting the sort of corporate risks compared with other things. But yes, we should. And to be honest, as I mentioned before, that the senior leadership team do challenge the various exec directors to share their registers and to ask questions about it and to deep dive on them. And they are quite happy to do that and to take those sort of conversations to make sure that they are seeing the right things. So yeah, I would say yes, we do see it going up. From an audit perspective, we have those conversations with the directors from the audit planning side as well, and we would have an understanding about what are the risks and with the department, and they do share that information with us as well. Yeah.
Excellent. And do you see a consistency across departments in that respect?
Some probably have more challenge than others because of the services that they provide. But yeah, there's still some areas probably where more learning could be had. And we are looking to try and develop some sort of training and toolkit to help everyone understand that risk is for all of everyone to understand, really, and to be able to make sure that there is no fear of reporting a risk. It doesn't reflect badly on someone if you report a risk, basically.
That does sound good. In particular, the idea, if there is best practices, that they are shared, and that, as you say, that risk is something that everybody faces, and it is something that needs to be shared, and there is no shame in risk itself. It is a matter of the job. I'm just going to read a comment for the record from our chief executive. We do deep dive with each directorate at SLT So there is transparency on mitigations. Okay, is there any further questions? In that case, I am going to move to the recommendation. Do members agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Thank you. In that case, we move to item 9, dates of future meetings. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I've jumped ahead of myself. Sorry, yes, we are missing an item. Yeah. So, Moira, could you please introduce our internal audit progress report for April to August of 25?
So this is our usual update partway through the year. We're changing our formatting a little bit to hopefully make it a little bit more aligned with the council's risks and values. It's not perfect yet, and it's not necessarily giving you lots of information because it's quite early in the year still with our outputs. But the finalised reports to date have been positive. We've got a couple of audits in draft. I think one of them may have been finalised recently. And we've got quite a few audits in progress. So I thought it was quite useful to show you in different ways maybe how we are progressing through our plan of work. I just wanted to identify that, you know, we've been doing quite a lot of school audits. We're going to do quite a lot of school audits this year. And we do have very good engagement with the finance and governance team to plan these because we can only do them during certain parts of the year for obvious reasons. And I was also invited along to meet the Senior Business Managers Forum, which was really helpful, so that they could understand the purpose of audit. And we always find that if people understand why we're doing something, that they're usually quite helpful in responding to us. We do go out to the schools. We like to go on site and actually meet people. So there's quite a lot of work going on. There's, as I say, it's the plan is evolving during the year as we know we add to the plan as we go through the year, depending on what the risks are. I don't think there's anything particularly significant I want to draw to your attention. I guess the only other thing is that we are trying to map recommendations that weren't implemented when we've done follow-ups, and we do carry on doing follow-ups. Sometimes they take a little bit longer than we would have liked. We're trying to rectify that, but we do map them in the report with the status, and when we do finally get sign-off on them, we will show you that on there as well. So hopefully this gives you a broad picture of what we've been doing in the last few months. With another update will be later in the year.
Thank you, Maura. Do members of the committee have any questions they wish to raise? Our independent member.
Thanks, Maura. It was just reading your report to the last meeting, the June meeting. There was a limited assurance audit on adult social care client affairs, which is in draft. And because it was in draft, the meeting didn't receive the management response. And I think there was an action to update on the management response and the progress at this meeting. So I just wanted to ask around that, because obviously the broad picture is that the audit reports are very positive, and in a sense I welcome limited audit reports because it means you're looking for things that are could be improved. But, you know, question, have you agreed the management response? Are you content it's at sufficient pace?
Yes, so we did finalise that report. It was probably around about the time just after the committee. And we were actually scheduled to do a follow-up there, but we're not doing it until January. And I'm looking at James because I think I finally agreed it with you, didn't I? It actually sits within an area in finance. So we scheduled the follow-up in for January, but the recommendations were all agreed, weren't they? And a plan was in place. It just took a little bit longer than we'd hoped.
Excellent. Any other questions? I just want to touch on the matter of schools more. Obviously, schools have come up on a number of occasions, and one of the particular challenges that we've seen across several updates has always been in terms of turnover and passing on knowledge from one to another as that occurs. I think from your perspective, are you seeing any improvement in this respect? Are you seeing a better transition of those with the responsibility for the financial reporting in our schools and academies?
I think it has been varied. I think that's a fair comment. I am aware that there are resources within the school's finance team who are supporting schools that may be struggling in skill sets or and they're actually going to help them to make sure that they're keeping on top of things. Deficit budget is obviously challenging, falling roles across London. And we're very aware of that. We're very mindful of that. So that's why we keep in touch really with the governance and schools finance team, because if there's anything that's worrying them, then we can support each other on that. As I said, when I met with the school business managers, they're very positive. One thing you will find is that there are now quite a lot of arrangements where people share resources. So a business manager may work across more than one school. And in fact, I think some of yours work across schools across boroughs as well, which was useful for us to know, because we didn't, I think they're called the Fox Federation, and there's schools in multiple boroughs, and we weren't necessarily at the beginning of this year clear who was in that federation. We are now, and it really helps us because we can make sure we don't inundate that poor business manager with 5 audits in 5 months, but actually understanding things are very different from how they used to be a few years ago. There's a lot more shared resources. But, there are benefits from that, of course. So I think the schools are, are doing the best they can, but there are struggles. Yeah.
I suppose 2 follow-ups to that is, firstly, obviously, there is best practices. And in terms of sharing best practices, is this something that you guys have developed a way to obviously gather and share for others to emulate?
Yes, so we make no secret about our audit. It's not we don't turn up and start demanding things. Well in advance, they have our entire work programme. It's mapped against the school financials value standard, which is really important. It's very clear about the role of governors, the expectations. It actually says why we do a test, what we're trying to check for, and the importance of it. So there's absolutely no secrets there. I'm very, very mindful that we're trying to be helpful to make sure that they are operating the school with the best finance and governance arrangements that they can. So yeah, I think we do. And we encourage them actually, like if they have a voluntary fund and it needs to have an independent reviewer, to do each other's, because they're small enough that they can do that, rather than have to worry about an additional cost that you're going to have to find maybe to get somebody else to do it. So yeah, and I say the School Business Managers Forum was really useful, and to see the interaction between the different people from the different schools was really helpful.
And then I suppose just a follow-up to, obviously, as you say, there's been a number of schools now that share resources potentially across boroughs. In terms of your cycle of audits, gathering when you complete, as you say, you do try to tie them into the school year. Would this be the same for all local government auditors of schools? Do they all take place at the same time, or would you need to adapt your schedule of audit to align or to somehow find a neutral ground if this is going to be kind of a more, let's say, shared time that you use?
So going back a few years, we used to audit the schools roughly every 3 years. But bearing in mind, we usually also have to do a follow-up. It would almost be continuous, and it was a little bit too much. So we actually audit them every 5 years unless there's a specific issue that we need to look at. The schools pretty much know when it's coming. We have to map in doing the school audits across we work for 3 boroughs, so we do the school audits for all 3 boroughs. But as I say, we identified there's a federation that also works across some of those boroughs, so it's useful to be able to do that. it's, I mean, the main restriction is we can only really do it when the schools are in term, because that's when the staff that we need to speak to are generally there, and the head teacher and everything. And obviously, sometimes things can knock us off course, for example, an unexpected Ofsted visit, which happens. And we did have some interesting ones, not in Hammersmith, but we actually had to do audits review very, very quickly because there were likely to be some mergers occurring. So they wanted a clean slate before the mergers took place. So it is our plan. We choose that as the frequency, and I think that's reasonable, to be honest.
Thank you, Maura. Is there any further questions? Okay, in that case, I'm going to move to the recommendations. Do members agree to note the report?
Agreed.
Excellent. In that case, we now move to item 9, which is, do members agree to note the dates of the future meetings, which is going to be the 1st of December, the 16th of March, and the 8th of June. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to close the open meeting. So for those joining online, thank you for attending tonight's meeting, and good evening. We will now switch off the live stream, and those who have joined remotely should be able to continue